A very pleasant morning, children. In today's turn, let's continue with the story The Adventure of the Mason by Washington Irving. But wait a minute. Before moving further, I want to see how many of you are able to recollect some of the events of the story that we have already discussed. So, the writer Irving tells us that once there was a poor mason in Granada who could hardly earn a living. One night, he was awakened by a knock at the door. He found a cadaverous person who offered him to undertake a job that very night. The mason agreed but laid one condition, that he should be well paid. The stranger granted his request, blindfolded him, and led him down various lanes and reached a doorway. The stranger unlocked and entered the door and led the mason through echoing corridors and a large hall. Finally, they reached at the Moorish fountain, under which the stranger asked him to construct a vault. The mason did so, and the next night he was called again to complete the construction, and he was paid accordingly for his work. Now, moving ahead with the storyline. Now, said the stranger, you must help me to bring forth the bodies that are to be buried in this vault. Buried, that is, put or hide underground. So now the stranger asked the mason to help him to bring the bodies up, the dead bodies up, so that he can or he could bury in the vault. That is, he could put the bodies underground this vault. The poor mason's hair rose on his head at these words. However, he followed the stranger. So on hearing these words, the poor mason's hair stood on end out of fright. He got afraid that what he is asking him to do. But again, as it was his job, with trembling steps, he followed the stranger into a separate room, into a retired chamber. Over here refers to a quiet, separate room of the mansion, expecting to see some ghastly spectacle of death, but was relieved on seeing 3 or 4 portly jars standing in one corner. So when he reached to this quiet chamber or the quiet room of the mansion, as he was told by the stranger, he was expecting to see some ghastly spectacle. Ghastly over here, horrible, terrifying and spectacle sight, right, of death. He was expecting to see what? To see some dead bodies, right? But he got relieved on seeing that there were no dead bodies. Rather, there were 3 or 4 portly jars. Portly, that is stout, heavy jars standing in one corner, that were placed at one corner. So he was relieved to see these 3 or 4 large jars. They were evidently full of money. It was evidently that it was clearly, it can be seen that these jars were full of money, and it was with great labor that he and the stranger carried them to their tomb. Now, it was with great labor that is, they put in a lot of efforts to carry these jars to the tomb. Tomb over here referring to the vault that the stranger has asked the mason to build. So he actually wanted to hide his money, hide these 3 to 4 jars that were filled with money under the vault. That is why he was referring to the vault as tomb over here, and he has referred to the 3 or 4 jars that were filled with money to as dead bodies. He actually wanted to keep it hidden. The vault was then closed, the pavement replaced, and all traces of the work were erased. So, after putting these large jars underground the vault, that was built by the mason, the vault was closed permanently. The pavement replaced, that is, pavement, that is a raised surface, was replaced, and all traces, marks of the work were erased. So the vault was closed, the paving stone was fixed, and no trace of the work remained. It was removed, right? The traces were removed. The mason was again blindfolded and led forth by a route different from that by which he had come. Now the mason, as after the work has been completed, he was again blindfolded, again led by the stranger out of the place, but this time it was some different route. After they had wandered for a long time through a confusing maze of lanes and alleys, they halted. And after wandering through a confusing maze over here refers to the network of lanes and passages, in between the buildings or maybe behind the buildings, they halted, they stopped. The stranger then put 2 pieces of gold into his hand and he said, "Wait here until you hear the cathedral bell toll for the morning prayer." He requested him to wait there at that place until he hears the cathedral bell, that is the church bell toll, that is ring for the morning prayer. So he said that you should wait here till the cathedral bell toll, till it rings. If you dare to uncover your eyes before that time, evil will come upon you. And he cursed him that if he happens to uncover his eyes before the told time, then evil will befall him. So saying, he departed. He left the place. The mason waited faithfully. The moment the cathedral bell rang, he uncovered his eyes and made his way back home. So, as soon as he heard the cathedral bell ring, he just made his way back to his home. He revelled with his family for a whole fortnight on the profits of his 2 nights' work, after which he was as poor as ever. So, of course, after this, as he had, gained 2 gold coins, yeah, right, that was a reward for his work. So, he enjoyed. Revelled over here means enjoyed. He enjoyed with his family for about 2 weeks on the profits of the 2 nights' work, right? What was the work? To build a vault, right? So he enjoyed, but after the money that was, spent, of course, he was poor again. He continued to work a little from year to year. As he was seated one evening at the door of his hovel over here refers to the small, badly maintained house of the mason. Why it was badly maintained? Because he was poor, right? He could not spend, or he could not afford to spend the money to maintain the house. Either he could feed his family or he could maintain the house. He was reached by a rich old curmudgeon. Curmudgeon is someone who is easily angered and often complaining, who was noted for owning many houses and being a gripping landlord. Gripping, that is complaining, all right? Someone who, happens to complain every time. So, of course, the poor mason has to, work a little from year to year so that he could, survive, he could feed his family, he has to earn a daily living. And as one evening he was sitting at the door of his small, unmaintained house, he was reached by a rich old curmudgeon, and he was actually the owner of many houses. He was known to be the owner of many houses, and he was a complaining landlord. The man eyed him for a moment from beneath a pair of thick, anxious eyebrows. Anxious over here, uneasy, stressed eyebrows. "I'm told, friend, that you are very poor." He said that, "I've been informed that you are a very poor mason." "There is no denying the fact, Signor. It speaks itself." So, to this, the mason replied that of course there is no denying, no refusal of the fact. It speaks itself. It speaks itself. That is, you can make it out from my condition as well as from the condition of the house, that of course I am poor. I believe then that you will be glad of a job and will work cheap. So, to this, the curmudgeon says that of course, if you will be offered a job to work cheap, to work at a cheap price, then of course you will be glad, you will be happy about it. If you are so poor, of course you will be happy to undertake any kind of job. "As cheap, my master, as any mason in Granada." To this he replied that of course he is, or he would be readily working at any price, at any cheap price. So just now it doesn't, matter to him whether he was being paid less. He needs money, though less in amount, to feed his family. That's what I want. And to this, this curmudgeon replied that that is what I want. I want someone who can or who could work for me at a very cheap price or at a very cheap rate. So, children, this brings forth a question in our mind. Why did the rich old curmudgeon come to the mason? What work he has to offer to him? Will it be more adventurous than being blindfolded and led to a place to build a vault? I know this has heightened your curiosity, but don't worry, I have all the answers to your questions. But you have to wait for the next turn. So, till then, read the story and don't forget to learn and write the underlined words under the heading difficult words twice in your notebooks. Take care of yourselves, children. Bye.